Good morning, Luis. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for another episode of Engineering Your Future podcast. Luis and I are excited to kind of kick off a multi-part series here, talking about entrepreneurship, side businesses, maybe even opening an engineering company, those sorts of things. And just want to maybe start off by saying, we are not necessarily extremely professional businessman, but we do have some experience opening up. I had Engineering U, where I did that for a number of years. I helped my dad grow his engineering business from 1 to 14 employees. You Engineering Our Future podcast, and you do some other things, and another new venture that you're jumping into, which is
Yep.
really exciting. So we're just kind of excited to share our stories. If we can help somebody get started, I think we're going to be really excited to be part of that journey for you. And if anybody can reach out for questions. But before we get started, Luis, do you want to maybe just let's just start right off, and why don't you kind of explain your experiences with different businesses that you've done?
Yeah. So, I mean, Engineering Future started, I think we talked about this back in 2020. Formally, I have never really opened an LLC or anything formal as a business, which I think we can touch on a little bit. It's always been like,
Solopreneur?
yeah, I think it's something like that in terms of like just how you get taxed. Basically, everything is attached to you. I felt comfortable like that just because, I mean, there's not really too much liability in terms of just having a podcast and giving kind of advice on careers and whatnot, which is kind of the main reason LLCs are kind of a thing. And like you hinted, we started kind of a separate business that has been more formal. It's a product. We have LLCs and all the paperwork that comes with that. But with Engineering Future, I think it's been again more of something that I've enjoyed doing the podcast and again I think we talk about how we have met so many people through this. You and I, even when we started this doing together a couple of years ago, creative partnerships with like companies like PPI, School of PE that have reached out and wanted to partner just because I have the podcast and talk with people, engineers, and multiple kind of smaller collaborations through the years. So it has been just a way to again do something I enjoy, just kind of talking to younger engineers, to professionals in a way that feels conversational, hasn't been like a huge burden in terms of like this big production. I have always wanted to keep it small, kind of casual, and I think that's kind of been the main goal since the beginning. I've played around with like courses a little bit, coaching a little bit, but as my family has started to grow, that those things just kind of became almost impossible. I think the podcast is the most I can do right now alongside the newsletter, and it's been fun. I just kind of took a step back in terms of like how much I was doing. It's becoming just something I just do for fun right now. Like it's not I'm not in a hurry to make any money or chasing making thousands of dollars every month. It's just something that it's been a lot of fun. I think you had a little
Hmm.
different approach, which is being cool to follow. And I know you haven't done much in the recent time, but just kind of walk us through your process, which I think it's been very very cool.
Yeah. So I started Engineering U back in 2014, 2015 time. That was right around the time where I went and did some training to be a financial coach, like a personal financial coach. And so at the time when I did that, I really only had coaching, individual clients in their personal finances as kind of like my main idea. I knew that there was always things in my head that I thought we could provide value to early career folks. I know that there were things that I wish I would have known early in my career, but at that time, Engineering U was mostly just uh, fixated on the personal finance part. And then soon after that, once I really kind of saw, wow, I love this coaching piece. I love the teaching aspect of this. What else can I do? So I quickly ended up adding the some self-leadership courses in there. It was kind of group courses. I think that people learning in groups, people having small group conversations is really important and a value, more than maybe a company who just says, here, watch our recording that, on our intranet or whatever. and then you're going to learn everything you need to know from that. I just that's not the way that I necessarily learn best. So I created a couple courses there, and so I did start an LLC. And I wish I could say I did it because I knew that that was what I was supposed to do, but I only did it because people told me I should. The coaching side of things is pretty limited liability. There's not a whole lot of risk there. So, somebody who doesn't open up an LLC, I think you're gonna be okay. But for me, it was a way to kind of make it more formal. I know in the next episode or two, we're going to talk more about money, and so we can kind of talk about some of the other aspects of that and bank accounts and all those sorts of things. So we'll dive into that later. But yeah, I never sold advertising. I never did that, which I think is another really cool way to bring in income. But I did have kind of those clients that would buy those courses, and that was kind of the main income source there. And then with my dad, so my dad actually owned, yes, it's past now because he did just sell. He owned an engineering company that was just him. And he invited me to join along with another partner, and we grew that company from the three of us to about 14 before I left. And now that company is doing very well. It's really exciting to kind of see them keep it going. But I was able to kind of see really the ins and outs of running an engineering business, even if it was a small one. It's still, you still have to get all the proper insurances and benefits and retirement, accounts and all of that. So I definitely have that experience. I think that that experience really helped shape a lot of how I got my job today. But but yeah, those are really great opportunities. And even though I may not have been financially tied up into the last company with my dad, just being able to see, kind of have a front row seat on how to grow that company was awesome, was so valuable. So I think today we just want to mostly talk about get started, and I know that that sounds so simple, but if you're a typical engineer, especially, an engineer like me that we're overanalyzing everything, we don't like risk, we don't like to necessarily put ourselves out there. I had ideas in my head for so long and I just never really pulled the trigger. And because I was scared or I was nervous or I thought, well, there's 10, 20, 100 other people doing the exact same thing. Like what makes me different? And so I think the message of today we want to just discuss is get started. And so I guess what do we need? What's the bare minimum we need to get started? For me, and maybe I'm oversimplifying this, but if I was going back to my old self and being able to tell that, younger Nicolai this information, you really just need the idea, and then you need to know the value that you bring, and then that's what you lean into. So for engineering you, I made a lot of mistakes in my early career, and there were a lot of things that I wish I would have known, or wish I would have been maybe taught formally rather than figuring it out on my own. But I had that knowledge, and then I had the passion of bringing it to young people. And then I felt like I was able to, one of my skill sets was able to run a small table discussion or a small group discussion and make sure everybody had the opportunity to speak. I was able to pick up on when somebody kind of wanted to speak, but maybe they were a little too shy to do it, and so I would call them out and invite them into the conversation. But just I feel like that was the biggest value I was able to bring was those small group conversations that really fostered and opened up that opportunity for people to learn together. I didn't really see that as a skill set at the time because that just was something I felt like I was good at. But I will say, years later, I've seen other people try and it's not as smooth. And I'm like, okay, it is a skill set. It's definitely something I'm good at. Just like I have weaknesses where other people shine. This was one area that I felt like I was able to provide that value. And then the content, is just very valuable and help people kind of navigate their early career. So I guess if you were to oversimplify this as well, just help me out here, Luis. I guess, is there anything else in your mind that the bare minimum to get started, what are you thinking to get started?
I think that's really just having an idea. maybe even like testing it even before you go all in this idea. I mean, I think everyone right now has LinkedIn. I think that's for us engineers. I've tried Instagram, I've tried Twitter, I've tried all these other social media. LinkedIn is still the most powerful one with the most reach for engineers. I think just testing ideas, just sharing, hey, I've been thinking about this, and like, see what kind of reactions you get. And then once you find kind of the niche or the area of expertise that you want to lean on to, just again follow that. And I think having a social media, I think it's also just a bare minimum. I would say a landing page nowadays is super easy. I know when I started, there were websites that made it a lot easier, but I had zero idea of how to do anything. So had to look up a lot of videos and ended up using WordPress, which is clunky, complicated, and nowadays I think I have everything in Notion, which they just launched way to create a website within Notion, which is amazing because that's where I write all the things. That's where all my content information lives in, and it's just easy to basically move stuff over and have it published. So having a landing page is kind of who you are, what are the things you have. If you already have services, if you already have something, it's an easy way to send people your way. Obviously, you don't have to have everything at the beginning. I didn't. I started the podcast on Anchor, which I don't even know if they exist anymore, which was kind of a side of Spotify. Posted everything there. Didn't really have a website. Eventually created a website to just have more of my information in there, and that's really all it took for me. Just kind of from there naturally started maybe doing some more writing because I enjoyed kind of the writing aspect. The newsletter didn't come until I believe like 2022. Some of the courses and all that until like later on. You For me it was just kind of starting small, getting started, prove that I can do it consistently, and then just start adding some things. And like I said, like nowadays my family's getting bigger, more things come up. I started to scale back again, and then it's kind of going back to the two things I enjoy the most, which is writing and just doing the podcast. And that's been great. No pressure. Again, I'm not trying to quit my job with these. I'm just kind of having fun talking to people. And like I said, I'm going to be going to the Steel conference this week. So like the first week in April, because they found me through the podcast. And the last 3 years, they have paid everything for me to come to the conference, which has been super cool. And one of the benefits is just being out there and talking with people and just kind of sharing the content. I want to touch a little bit on kind of the other business that I just started, because this one is maybe a little more interesting because it's not related to engineering, and you can probably hint it and see it out here. So that little bag there, we're starting to sell coffee, like my family's coffee from Colombia. So it's a physical product. We started an LLC doing all the formal stuff. Again, kind of what you said, just started. Like they said that they were like, we have the coffee. It would be great to sell over there. We're doing this with my brother. So my brother and I are kind of importing the coffee and selling it. We're just learning along the way. We have a website now that we're kind of starting to get orders, and I have a makeshift kind of behind the computer and the camera here, corner where I put all the coffee labels, boxes, all of that stuff. So it's a little more involved, but it's been a lot of fun because I mean, connect with my brother a little more. Constantly talk with my parents, which are the ones kind of working on the farms and getting the coffee and doing all of this stuff. So it's been a little different, but honestly, it's been kind of a nice way to not think always about engineering, like productivity and all these things that I've been trying to do for so long, and more of like what makes a great cup of coffee. Like, how do you roast the coffee to bring the best flavors to it? How do you grow the coffee? How do you do all of these things that my parents have been in this for since they retired a couple years ago, like full time. So they always kind of talk us through that, but it's been a lot of fun to actually take the coffee, send it to people, and obviously seeing what they think of the physical product, which is definitely different than what you and I have done over the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So definitely something
Yeah.
that I will be maybe doing another episode in the future. We can do it when we once a little more established. We just started maybe a month ago. So we're kind of getting off the ground, but it's been pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're going to be learning so many more things. And I know with podcasting, you had to learn, how everything got recorded and then all the video. And, as you grew and you kind of continue to evolve. That was pretty cool. But on your sense, you have to have a lot of things in the coffee selling business kind of set up now. Getting all the boxes, everything, and all the shipping labels and all of that. Like that is a lot more upfront work, I think. I will just say we're almost done with our first bag, so we might have to be ordering more here soon. I think before you started talking about the coffee, you were kind of talking about starting small, and that was actually the other thing I wanted to also bring up myself is I thought I had to have everything figured out, and I was reading how to start a business books, and I was trying to write a business plan, and it is good. It is. I'm not trying to discount those things. I'm not trying to say they're not important. It is good to have a plan, but at some point you have to get started. And I thought I had to have everything figured out. I had to have all of my resources and offerings out, not just the one. I quickly realized that in business, if you build it, they will come does not really apply. I thought if I created a website, the world would find it. And that was not the case. I don't know about you, Luis, but like nobody found my website just by accident. And then I had to learn about, marketing. And then I had to learn about how to go to people and sell my product and introduce my product to them and show them the value that it will provide to them. If they invest this amount of money, this is how I think that investment will pay off for them down the road. And I had to learn that, and then I had to get out of my comfort zone because I hated that part of it. Like, but I mean, you have to start and start small, be willing to pivot. That's another one that we had to do, but you don't have to have it all figured out, all in place. Just get started, and then you kind of make pivots from there. Because once I did kind of just take the plunge and I went for it, um, engineering you today, well, today it's on kind of on pause, but before I paused it, it looked a lot different than it did when I had started it, 8 years prior. So you just got to figure it out, and then you kind of figure out too, maybe your clientele that you had in your mind, like that perfect avatar that you're trying to sell to and provide value to, maybe they don't really want your product, and then you figure out, oh, this other group is wants my product, but they want to hear it in this way or see it in this way, and they want to buy it in this way, whatever it might be. Like you just have to be able to pivot, and you're going to pivot a lot. And if you're not flexible and willing to pivot and realize, ooh, okay, I don't know everything, or oh, I anticipated this wrong, let me make an adjustment, you're going to struggle. But start small, be willing to pivot, but the biggest thing is get started, because you can't pivot anywhere if you don't start. um yeah, so that's the case. I am very interested to watch your coffee business and see how that goes. I guess if I were to add one more thing on my end, I would also really want to know why you're starting the business. If you are starting this business because you just want to make a ton of money, honestly, I don't really see there's anything wrong with that, but just own that. And you're probably going to be pivoting a lot. You're probably going to be failing a lot, and you're going to make adjustments quickly. But you're probably going to be moving faster than other people who are maybe doing this more for uh, the client themselves. It's not necessarily I'm trying to make money, but I'm trying to provide value and education, or I'm trying to provide value in whatever the product is that you're providing. But knowing why you want to do it for me is a big deal. For me, I just did not want other people to struggle the way that I did. And I also think that as I see engineers, or really any professional, but you grow in your career, you get promoted, they put you in a position of leadership and you've never led before, and it's a struggle. And I just think, why do we not train this more when it's not the main focus of your results, right? Like I have an EIT and I'm doing leadership training with them, because then when it is time for them in a few years to become leaders and start training other people, they have those skill sets already, rather than now having to learn it all on the fly and at that time. So, it's not some of the things that we're going through right now are not their responsibility yet, but it's a really safe opportunity to be learning these things and practicing these things, before it becomes part of their key responsibilities. So for me, that was what I wanted to do. I thought if I made a little money to help my golf addiction, I would be okay with that. And we did pretty good, for a few years. And now I've kind of put that on hold. I don't think it's gone forever, that's for sure. But I am excited about the future and what that may bring. And partnerships like with you are awesome. I think they're really fun, but I think we can get into that when we talk about more of the challenges and conflicts that maybe we went through during those times, or maybe some
Yeah.
of those things that caused us to pivot. We'll cover that in another episode.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that is probably going to be a long conversation, but I totally agree with you. Just starting with just maybe something you can have fun with. Like, hopefully, you're not trying to just fully quit your job immediately, which is something we're going to touch on. Like, starting something that you're going to enjoy and has a little runway at the end of the day. Just making sure again, if you're going to start something on the side, it's going to to be something you enjoy, because otherwise you're going to be miserable the whole way. And if that's the goal for you to quit your job, you're going to be miserable even after you quit your job. So just something that you enjoy, you're passionate about, has meaning to you, and something that really inspires you to do the work. I think when I started this, I was working, again, full-time job. I think we had 1 or 2 kids at a time, and I'll put them to bed around 7, 8 p.m. And then I do a couple hours of work for the podcast after that every single evening. But that felt fun. It felt interesting. I was learning a lot. I was helping people. So doing something that you are passionate about, I think that's kind of the main goal at the end of the day. Start small, do something that you enjoy, and hopefully become something big. And if you are truly passionate about making that your full-time job, then you're gonna have to work a lot harder than if you just want it to be maybe a hobby or something to pay for your golf addiction, or my tech addiction in my case, just something that maybe brings a little more income. And it could just be a couple hundred a month, and that will pay for vacation once a year, and that's something that you enjoy. So again, finding something that you enjoy, I think is the main thing we want to get across. Obviously, if you really want to do it, just get started. Doesn't take too much nowadays. There's a lot of free tools out there, and you and I are a great resource to just reach out if you have any questions. I think LinkedIn is the best place. The newsletter, I think I read every single email, get back from that. So yeah, anything else you want to share, Nicolai, before we wrap this up?
Nope, just get started, take that leap, I guess surround yourself with some really good people that can encourage you too, because it can get a little lonely. And I think we'll cover that as well in another episode. But, getting people like you, Luis, has just been so great for me to learn more. You've helped me step up my tech game a little bit. You've taught me a little bit about the, behind the scenes, automation and all those sorts of things. I would have struggled to find those things on my own, but you've given me so many really cool tips that helped. And so that would be, once you get started, find that core group of people that's really going to help build you up. And I think that would be a really great thing to do.
If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, you're gonna love the content we have over our newsletter. Every issue comes packed with information about the episode that we recorded, giving you detailed action items, as well as just reflection on some of the things that you could apply in your career, in your life. And I always enjoy sitting down on a Sunday, Saturday sometimes, and writing down each newsletter. Comes packed with a lot of information, a lot of links, a lot of great lessons and knowledge that we share both in the podcast, but I'll try to go a little deeper into that connection. So if you are interested in that at all, go to luisfelipeduque.com/newsletter. All the information is there. I'm excited for the podcast and where it's going. So I want you to know about that resource as well. Nicola and I put a lot of effort in the podcast, and we're enjoying the conversations. And as well, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, go to the link in the description below, or luisfelipeduque.com/contact, and let's connect. We're happy to provide you with all the information you need, and always excited to have that conversation as well. Thank you, Jack Windes, for the music. And as always, let's continue engineering our future.